everyone, and welcome to the Trada webinar, Big Data and How It Improves Your Marketing Performance. In just a moment, I will get to introducing our speakers, but before we get started, I want to say welcome and give you a few details about today's call. So this is being recorded, and you will get a follow-up email probably today or tomorrow with a copy of the recording and the slides for your perusal. Also, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box during today's call, and we will get to as many as we can at the end. So it is now my pleasure to introduce one of our speakers. This is Jacob Ross from Criteo. Jacob, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
So Jacob, you are the VP of Operations. How long have you been with Criteo?
I've been at Criteo a little more than a year now.
Great. Well, we are looking forward to hearing all of your expertise today on performance display.
Absolutely. Criteo is doing some really interesting things, so it's an honor for us to get to co-present this webinar.
So that voice you hear, of course, is Matt Hessler. He's our Director of Account Management here at Trada. He's been in the PPC and SEO and digital marketing space for 13 long years.
It's true. It makes me feel like a very old person.
And I will be moderating today. I'm Anna Sawyer. I work here at Trada as well. So everyone, if you learned some things in today's webinar, we would like to encourage you to share them on Twitter. And if you use the hashtag TradaBigData, you have a chance to win a $25 Amazon.com gift card. We give one out every time we have a webinar. You could buy yourself one hardcover book with that on Amazon.com.
Or a Christmas gift for a loved one.
Yes, there are lots of options. So everyone, I'm going to jump right into it. Please remember to continue to type your questions into the chat box. So let's talk a little bit about the opportunity that the marketing channels that you're already using give to you because they are producing this massive amount of data. In many ways, that's primarily the sort of overarching concept of what we're going to talk about today, that you are probably already using search marketing, you're probably already using performance display and some other digital marketing channels, and they produce this data that is utterly invaluable to driving how you should run your business. So before we kick off all of the content, I'd actually like to do a poll. So if you don't mind just clicking directly onto your screen, I'm interested to know which channels comprise your digital marketing mix. So please go ahead and click onto the screen and let me know. Are you doing paid search on Google, Yahoo, and Bing? Are you doing traditional display like running display ads on Google? Are you doing performance display using something like retargeting? I'm sure a lot of you are running SEO. It's something of a basic email marketing, social media, paid Facebook and LinkedIn ads. I'm really interested to know what everyone's marketing mix is so that we can kind of tailor our conversation around this.
That works. Let's take a minute, let you guys fill out this questionnaire. I know people may be doing an interesting mix of different things, and this might help us to kind of tailor the webinar and talk about some of the various mediums and how they can interact and how you can leverage this big data to work on lots of these things.
Yep, I'm going to give everyone about 10 more seconds to get your answers in here. And then everyone, if you did respond, you will see the results, but if you did not respond, you will not see them. So I don't know if that convinces anyone. All right, one more second. Let's skip to the results. So it looks like an overwhelming majority are using paid search, and a pretty healthy percent are using performance display as well. Those are the two primary channels that we're going to talk about today, but we will also talk about creating the ultimate marketing mix, which will include a lot of these different channels. So pretty fascinating, actually, and I'm impressed to see that everyone has such a healthy mix. So moving along, at this point, all digital marketing is or should be performance-based at this point. So now everyone's just racing to become more efficient. So I'm kind of wondering, Jacob, and I'd like to send this question over to you, at what point does this actually still matter to the mid-market advertiser? I'd like to hear you talk about how bigger, better, and faster data helps a mid-market or smaller advertiser.
Sure. So, I'm sure as many people on the phone are aware, advertising has been changing a lot very quickly lately. And what we've seen is that from the old days, online at least, where you had sort of one or two different choices on how to drive marketing effectiveness for your business, now you have a plethora of decisions to make, whether you want to advertise in different formats, search, display, etc. who you want to use as a partner, how much control you want to have versus not. And I think at the end of the day, and when we really get to the place where we can be a fully scalable industry in terms of online marketing, what I think especially the smaller advertisers, and not the retail top 50 or anything like that, can do is to find a solution where there's already been a major investment in using big data and technology in order to drive effectiveness the most. And the perspective that I'm coming from is, in general, what you want to do is you want to look for you want to take advantage of users who have already been to your site and who have already shown an interest in your product and potentially bought your product. You also want to figure out ways to drive users to your site or to your brand when they're not aware of you at all. And so we sort of think about marketing in that context. And it sounds very simple, so either remarket to users who are already interested in you or are already your customers, or go out and find new users. But in order to do that, it's quite complex. Here at Criteo, we can talk about this more in a little bit. We've made a huge investment in technology and in manpower in order to do that scalably. Small enterprises don't have the luxury of doing that, and we believe they shouldn't really need to do that. So I think the key is to harness all the capabilities that partners like Criteo and like Trada bring to the table in order to accomplish your marketing objectives. So what I think the net result of big data is it's a powerful engine for small companies, and at the end of the day, the point of using it is not to make it complicated for the smaller advertiser, but to help them stay focused on their objectives of running their business and growing their business, and then find the right partners who have already made that investment to help them drive that forward.
Very well said. I think a really good point is that it's available to you. You already have these tools because this is data that's being driven specifically by things that you're already running. And Matt and I were talking about how when we say the word big data, people think of these terabits, petaflops.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people get intimidated by the nomenclature big data. Does that mean I need to have millions of data points? And it's not necessarily about the total volume that it's gotten so enormous, but it's that you're getting good streams of data from all of these different sources now, from search and display and retargeting. How do you integrate that data? And while it may look small to an Amazon, it can be sufficient enough for you to really guide your marketing efforts.
So the big question that we're going to talk about today is, how do you bring your data together? How do you make yourself more effective? What do you do with it?
Let's figure it out.
Let's figure it out. So Jacob, you work at Criteo, where you guys talk about a lot of big, exciting ideas, and some of these things that are possible, even for a smaller advertiser, are things like having real-time relevant content, understanding data visualization, and predictive analysis. Can you talk a little bit about how this actually does apply to maybe a slightly smaller advertiser?
Yeah, so I think like I was saying before, the whole idea is that we're not trying to put the advertiser in the cockpit of a 747 and say, hey, you have 1,000 buttons and levers, and you have to figure out which ones to push, and we'll be there next to you to help you push them. But at the end of the day, the advertiser needs to stay focused on the objective. So I think what we try to bring to the table is, one is, and any partner small businesses want to look for is, if you say to them, look, I need your help to help drive my business. I want to increase brand awareness. I want to drive users to my site. You should look to them to provide an answer on that front. The way that we do it, looking behind the curtain, is similar to the way that other big companies do it, like Google and like other major advertising companies. So what we'll do, Criteo, is take in billions of signals in real time. We'll take in the indications of interest that your customers have. What products are they looking at? How often have they been to your site? And we'll store that for you on an anonymized basis. And then the idea is that we take all that data, we're able to crunch it in real time, and then we're able to find that user, show them the right ad at the right time to provoke the most optimal response possible. Then in terms of data visualization and analysis, I don't think anybody, unless they're in an analytics team or a real data geek, wants to look at pivot tables and complex graphs and all that. We have the ability to provide that, and you should want that if you want to take a deep dive in your business. But at the end of the day, I think finding reporting that feeds back how well you're doing for those objectives is critical. So you want to understand who you're reaching. Are they new users or not? How are they responding? How do you know whether to have them respond better? And then ultimately, how many sales is that driving for you? And that's pretty much it.
So really the thing that we're trying to move toward is being able to have a data-driven business. It's using this data to understand where to take your business, whether it's from a product standpoint or a sales standpoint. So I'm wondering, Jacob, do you think that these big ideas, things like data visualization and predictive analysis, are available right now to a smaller customer if they're not using a big platform like Criteo? I mean, are these things that people can do on their own, or is it something that it's just too much data to be able to actually learn anything from? Is it too daunting?
Well, I think anybody on this phone call could probably take on this challenge if they want. And I think the question is, where do you want to make an investment in your business? So I think there are tools absolutely for a small and medium-sized business to look at the data that's coming in from your marketing objectives and from your point of sale and all that stuff and try to make informed decisions. But I also think that we're in a great state of the market right now where you have partners who've already made that investment. I can't speak for other companies, but at Criteo we've invested tens of millions of dollars into infrastructure and data storage and interpretation platforms. We've hired 300 engineers to build the right algorithms to find the right user at the right time. And the output of that is a dashboard that customers can use on a pretty easy basis to manage their business. And we think probably 90% of the market will want that type of product. For the ones that want something more custom, I think the question is not can they do it, but is it worth the investment of time, resources, and energy to build that on your own?
Yeah, so I think this is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But I think the idea here is that marketers right now, whether they're on a mid-sized team or an enterprise team, are empowered to really measure things and really care a lot about data. But in the future, it's going to be utterly a requirement. And so that really starts now. Would you agree?
Yeah, and this is that transition from being data-informed is maybe what you can be as a small business with kind of your regular platform tools and what the analytics you get from your search and your different partners. I think moving towards that data-driven business where you're really forecasting your future decisions, your marketing budgets, all that stuff, based on all these trends, it is really helpful to have a platform like Criteo where you can get pretty solid information that's boiled down to a level that is really the right level for a decision-making marketer, not a really heavy and heady data problem. So I like the fact that Criteo really boils some of this stuff down for those of us that just want to make a marketing decision to plan our 2013 budgets and look at how our channels are going to align and all of that.
Yeah, and I think, and just to add to that, Matt, look, by no means are we the perfect solution for everybody, and I'm not here to just stump for Criteo, but I do think that there's a lot of noise in the market, and especially for people who are trying to figure out how to solve problems, it's hard because everybody does a little bit of everything, and it's very easy to get mired into just testing and testing and testing. I think regardless of who you go with as a partner, you have to figure out, you have to be able to keep your eye on the ball. What is your objective? What are you trying to hit? Is your partner able to help you do that? Are you paying too much? Are you paying too little? How do you understand the success? And that's all we try to do. That's what we talk to our customers about every day. And I think that's something that we understand there's a lot of pain right now, especially as technology evolves. But I think that it's a fun challenge to try to tackle.
I completely agree. So everyone, let's take a step back and talk a little bit about what some of the parts of this marketing mix mean. So, we're talking a lot about performance marketing. Obviously, everybody is excited right now about retargeting, and we're talking about performance display, the ability to have display run like search. And search really sort of wrote the blueprint on this. And in the context of today's conversation, all of these things are important. It works like an auction. It's scalable, measurable. But most importantly, it generates a ton of data. And, one thing that, it is important to consider when using performance marketing is that not only does it require a bunch of data, but it also generates this incredibly useful data. And even human solutions like Trada use huge amounts of data. This is something that is, for those of you who are familiar with Trada's platform, we have a crowd of paid search advertising experts who do the work for you, but it's not like they just show up and do the work. There's this massive underlying algorithmic, platform that everything works on top of. For example, we assign the best paid search experts to your campaign, and it's based on a number of factors, including their historical performance. We have all sorts of gamification things. There are lots of ways to build this data platform to make sure that the human solution works.
Yeah, you want the person working on your search campaign to know your vertical and all of that stuff. All that stuff can be empowered by data. It's just another theme of where data really helps to move all these businesses forward.
And it's funny, we spend a lot of time saying, like, a human solution versus a data solution, but there's really no such thing. Anytime you have a big data solution, humans are involved. And anytime you have a human solution that works, big data is involved. So it's definitely something to consider. There always has to be a human element. There also, there always has to be this ability for humans to work with the data, and that's sort of what we're talking about. Matt's giving me a skeptical face right now, so I'm trying to figure out what that's all about. Let's move on and talk a little bit about how other channels have followed suit, using this performance model, traditional display, and now we have performance display. So, I'd love to talk a little bit about how performance display can help you squeeze the most out of your search dollars. We all know that we need to do paid search from our poll earlier. It seems as though something like 96% of our registrants or attendees today are actually doing search. And as search prices go up, it's important to make sure that you're getting the most possible out of every single click. So, Hessler, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how.
Yeah, we see this all the time. We're living it day in and day out, especially during the holidays. Massive click price inflation as things are getting more competitive. It's a huge time of year as all these e-commerce players are adjusting bids to maximize ranking, maximize visitation of the site. But once you get those people there and you've spent now a fairly significant amount per visitor on that visit, how do you continue to nurture that relationship? This is where a lot of this performance display becomes critical, and if you're doing it right, it allows you to be so much more competitive on the search side. You can pay an average cost per click that's higher because your likelihood of monetizing that visitor downstream is going way up through all the rest of your efforts.
And let's talk about this idea that retargeting equals nurturing. So before the call today, we were talking about the old school idea that you need to have 5 touch points or 7 touch points or 12 touch points or whatever in order to have a potential customer be ready for you to sell them. And historically, these touch points may have been, you send them an email with a white paper and follow-up, or, from an e-commerce perspective, they could be different types of touch points. But we now have the ability to have these touch points be automated and get data from them. And Jacob, this is something that we talked about a little bit earlier. Can I hear you expand a little bit on this idea that retargeting can equal nurturing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even just say, again, just going back, so we have a very user-centric view at Criteo. Retargeting is absolutely a way to look at a way that you go back and find users who are already yours. And I think that's what you're talking about, Anna. I think the thing that we see is that it doesn't make sense to just show somebody one advertising message once ever. There has to be a conversation that happens. And what we found is, and this is I think where the data-centric piece comes into it, we found is we can actually measure how likely it is that somebody responds to an ad depending on how many times they've seen the ad before. And we call that user fatigue. We don't have to get too technical, but the idea is that it's critical to message to people multiple times. One strategy is to find people that have been to the site and then show them an ad on a sequential basis, so more than once. And then what we found is that is directly correlated with their tendency to come back to the site and make a purchase. Not just come back to the site and click around, but come back to the site and make a purchase and buy a product that they're interested in. So I think what we've seen is that the difference between now and before is that we can actually build advertising strategies on an automated basis that can nurture people by showing them multiple exposures of ads, and then that results in better performance and happier customers.
And this is so much more measurable than when we use, these different types of touch points in the past. I think this is a good opportunity to talk about these two popular types of retargeting, site retargeting versus search retargeting. So actually, Jacob, I'd love to hear your input on sort of the difference between these two. Site retargeting, I think, is the one that people are most familiar with, which is when someone comes to your website and then you send them ads that follow them around on the internet, which has a couple of different benefits. If they're not familiar with retargeting, they think, whoa, Trada's advertising on ESPN, they must be some big cheese. But search retargeting is something that I think is a concept that's a little bit newer to people. Can you explain how that works, Jacob?
Yeah, so site retargeting is if somebody comes to your site, we try to learn something about them, and then when we show them an ad again after they leave, we try to give them something as relevant as possible. And that's why site retargeting has been such a popular strategy, is because generally speaking you get fantastic performance because you're showing somebody something very relevant to a behavior that they just displayed. And you're showing them a really relevant ad. Now, search retargeting is a similar concept where how search retargeting works is somebody makes a search somewhere, right? And then let's say that search is red shoes from Macy's. And that's obviously a layup for any advertiser because it's got a brand in it, it's a very specific product, etc. What we can do is we can actually purchase that data on that user. We don't know who the user is, but we know the search. And then we can show that user an ad from Macy's for red shoes and drive that user back to the Macy's site. That user may have never been on Macy's, but we know that they're interested in the product and the brand from a search that they've done. So it's very similar to site retargeting, but the data that we get isn't data that we get on site. It's data that we get in various search environments. And
an important point here is that, that's a great description. So an important thing to note is that site retargeting, the number of people you can retarget is finite because you can only target the number of people who have been to your site. With search retargeting, there doesn't even need to be a click. So it's my understanding that you are essentially, like the way Criteo does it or the way other retargeting companies do it, is that they actually do purchase bundles of search data and then cookie those users. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So everything is on a per user basis, and it's all anonymous, of course, because it's very strict rules that we have from our regulatory agencies. But yeah, the idea is that, and I would almost superimpose on this slide for the purposes of this conversation is site retargeting are people who you know already. Search retargeting is when you want to drive more users to your site and you've already maxed out your SEM spend. So you've done a great job of purchasing keywords you think are relevant, keywords you're not sure are relevant, you monitor your bidding, and you drive users to your site. Search retargeting, which is retargeting users with a display ad, is a complement to that. So we take the existing search data that any user on the internet is displaying, and we show them a relevant ad to drive them to your site. So for user acquisition, search retargeting is a fantastic strategy. Once that user goes to your site, you can use site retargeting to push them further down the funnel and get them to convert on whatever action you're trying to achieve.
That's awesome, and I think we're going to cover more about where these might live in your funnel a little bit later. So it's pretty cool stuff. It makes a little more sense to me once you see it applied to a classic funnel. I think these two are really complementary and very cool to use together.
Yeah. So from the perspective of the idea that we are trying to get as much as we can out of our digital marketing dollars, there is this idea, and that we want to generate a lot of data so that we can make better decisions. There is this idea that the more things you try, the more variables you have, the better data you generate. So Jacob, my question for you is, for a smaller advertiser, of course you want to have lots of variables, but when does it become unrealistic given the size of the data set? So if you are, and when we say a smaller customer, we're talking more about kind of like a mid-market company here. What's the sweet spot for how many variables you should have when doing this type of display advertising?
6.
6. That is a simple answer.
I love an unequivocal answer. 6.
No, I'm just kidding. I think here's what we think. I think the more you try, the better data you generate is absolutely true. And I think what we found is that advertisers want to know everything about their users that they possibly can to better market to them. The challenge today is that the more you experiment, the more you spend time interpreting the tests and results and all that stuff. So what I would say is that what we try to help with our clients do, and I'm sure you guys do this too, is we try to make sure that for the key things, we show the advertiser what's working and what's not. If a user is only lightly engaged with the site or they have these certain search terms, here's the performance that we get. In terms of the ads that we show them, is a dark background or a light background more optimal? In terms of well, so there are various strategies. I guess the point that I'm trying to make a long story short, is that there are going to be millions of different dimensions and millions of different variables, and mid-market advertisers, and any advertiser for that matter, shouldn't have to worry about optimizing for every one. Sorry, there's an ambulance going by, but it has nothing to do with the webinar.
You're doing great under pressure.
I think, right. I think the key is that the technology has evolved to the point where we can ingest almost an unlimited number of variables, age and gender and search terms, and we can talk about that data later on. And what you just want to make sure is that the performance of that campaign is hitting the objectives that you're trying to hit. And so I think as opposed to saying, hey, here are a bunch of different variables that you should be thinking about, we say, tell us your objective, let's understand your business, we'll optimize automatically in real time. We do this billions of times a day, and then if the performance is not where you want it to be or it's exceeding your expectations, then we can try new things. And that's where advertising becomes fun, it becomes strategic, and it becomes really profitable for your business, because you can see for every dollar you invest, you're getting back more than that in advertising efforts.
And I think the best practices, I mean, this is just a way bigger, more complex scale of A/B testing a search ad or something like that the users might be familiar with. You just have to be methodical, generate a ton of data, test a lot of things, but test them, sequentially so you know what's working and what's not.
Great, guys. So I'm going to move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about that funnel that we talked about earlier, understanding the full funnel and maybe kind of looking at it in a different way now that we have different ways to nurture and different ways to add leads into the funnel. So, we do know that we need to do paid search advertising. So let's talk a little bit about that mix of search and other channels. So, Jacob, this is a graph that comes from Criteo where you talk about how, with performance display, you can actually address every point in the funnel. So I'd love to hear you talk about the different ways that you can address this.
Yeah, sure. So I know there's a couple different things going on this slide. I think the key things to think about are the funnel. So everything we see is user-centric. So for your business, you have to think about, hey, I have customers that I already know about. What do I talk to them about? I have customers that I want to find who have never even heard of me before. Where we try to help clients is you want to address all levels of this funnel, and depending on where they are in the cycle, you have to show them a marketing message customized for them. So where retargeting comes into play is down at the bottom of the funnel. It's when they've been to your site and looked at specific products, what is it that they are seeing, so that you can show them an ad that provokes them to buy a product. When you're thinking about bringing a user in who isn't aware of your site, you want to think about what they like, who they are, because somebody who is looking for Macy's red shoes is probably not going to be, a 18-year-old guy. Not to draw any hard conclusions, but that's generally not the demographic that you're looking at. So what we try to get our advertisers to think about, we try to deliver for them, is a series of strategies, and we do this in concert with folks like Trada and other partners. It's a series of strategies that allow them to market to people where it's most relevant in order to acquire the most new customers possible, and for existing customers to turn them into brand loyalists to increase their buying frequency the most effective way. So I think that's how I sort of summarize that slide. And I know we have some more funnel stuff to talk about later on, so that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, so I like this idea that this is a sort of like a micro view of how within a specific channel you can hit every stage of the funnel. And of course, we recommend that you have a well-defined marketing mix, which means that you're using a lot of different channels to reach as many potential customers as possible. So here we actually have a case study of yours, Jacob, which is a specialty retailer called shoemall.com that uses search, performance display, email marketing, and comparison shopping engines. And what they really do is they benefit from a well-defined marketing mix. So, while many of these channels can hit a lot of the different stages of the funnel, I mean, if you think about even in an email marketing campaign, you're able to hit a lot of different types of the funnel. You simply set up different campaigns and reach out to groups of people and nurture them, and reach out to people who are maybe just starting to be aware of a product, and then you also target those who are a little later on. You're able to target different stages of the funnel in a lot of these different channels, but having all the channels working together in tandem is really where you hit that sweet spot of generating a ton of useful data and being able to get as many customers as possible. Jacob, I'm not sure if you have any comments about this case study specifically in terms of how they're using performance display.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the takeaway for us and why we were so excited about their performance was, like you just said, there have been many different strategies. Look, search is probably the best advertising medium ever created from an efficiency perspective. You want a product, so you search for the product, and then you see an ad for the product, so you buy the product. It's ingenious. But what we found is that in order to maximize the effectiveness and branded factor of your ads, you do need to have a marketing mix. Shoemall has used search marketing, comparison shopping engines, email marketing in a variety of ways over the years. When we were able to have a program with them, they saw that the sales due to display marketing increased dramatically because we were able to slot in properly to their overall marketing mix. And the challenge is with search, there's only so much search you can do. Search is getting more expensive. Search doesn't have a branding component to it. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's a very effective advertising medium for doing some things. And so I think what Shoemall, to their happiness, found is that they could use display on a performance basis, or a performance basis, depending on where you went to school, to increase their performance overall, and that's really what we're trying to do here is to add another way to effectively market using display, a medium that is rarely has worked in the past, to help advertisers drive their business forward. And for them, we helped with dynamic ads. We showed relevant product recommendations based on shoes that users had seen versus not seen. We measure their ROI on a post-click basis very, very closely. We also help them bid differently for users that had seen one category of shoes versus a different category of shoes, because we know our advertisers have different profit margins for different lines of business, and that's really critical. So we provided the tools that they needed to achieve the performance that they were looking for in the context of an overall marketing mix.
Great. I love this story of telling about a real company that really benefits from this marketing mix. So we're going to take a step back and look at a funnel that includes the idea that we would have a marketing mix that is broader. So we showed you that sort of more micro funnel that shows how you can hit all the stages of the funnel with one channel. And then we take a step back and show how you can hit all of the stages of the funnel with all of your channels. So we have it separated into two parts, interest-based and intent-based. When you're interested, you may use things like, you're just learning a little bit about things. So we use things like behavioral targeting and search retargeting. And down here at the bottom, we have site retargeting and search marketing for intent-based. And the coolest thing about replacing these touch points, if you go back to that touch point analogy, you need to touch a customer a certain number of times before they're ready, is that now these are measurable, they're automated, and they're more efficient, and most importantly, they generate the data that allows us to make better decisions about the way that we run our business. So I'm going to move along. We'll talk a little bit about how, as a smaller or mid-market company, you can use this data that you're getting from all of these channels to nurture and drive up lifetime value. So we mentioned, I think Matt and Jacob both mentioned, that search advertising is getting more expensive. It's increasing at a rate of something around 7% per year.
That's what we hear, is about 7% a year in terms of average cost per click prices. So it depends on your industry and vertical. Some have seen rapid click price inflation, and that's the beauty of an auction-based system for Google. They just throw their hands up and say, well, it's not us inflating this, it's just getting more competitive. And while that's true, it costs you as the advertiser, if you're trying to be really effective in search, you're pushing up those bid prices now year over year, anywhere from 5 to 10%.
And it can seem a little bit hard to swallow, but if you think about how far search has come, 10 years ago, you could do literally anything in search because so few people were doing it. All it means is that now you just need to be a little bit smarter about what you do with those clicks. And so this idea of driving up lifetime value and average order value is the best way for a smaller or mid-sized company to be able to compete with those bigger companies. So the way we kind of tell this story a lot, and we'll share in the follow-up email the link to this white paper, but we talk about the concept that if you think of like a big box retailer that sells office supplies, like OfficeMax, they can sell a stapler that costs $10 with a click for $10. Now you would think that that would be not a very smart choice because they aren't actually making any money off of it. And as a smaller advertiser that sells staplers, there's no way that you can compete with that. And the reason that OfficeMax can get a click for $10 for a $10 item is because they know they have the data and the ability to drive up lifetime value. They know that their average customer comes back a certain number of times and makes a certain number of purchases over their lifetime, which is far more valuable than that click. And they also know that their average shopping cart size is actually $100. I'm making all of these numbers up. But because they have this data and because they have this information to understand their lifetime value and their average order value, they're able to spend more on a click. And as a smaller advertiser, you have this power as well. It's not something that is specific only to being a larger company. It's just, as a smaller company, being able to understand these numbers and potentially set a different CPA will help you to be able to compete. So I'd love to hear Jacob's thoughts on how you can actually use data from performance advertising to understand about customer profiles and behavior and create these programs.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, absolutely. So I think ultimately what we want to do is to, again, go back to the idea that users are, that your marketing is essentially looking at users who are in various parts of the funnel. And there's a lot of ways you can go out and you can buy specific demographics. You can look for specific behaviors. et cetera. But at the end of the day, the KPIs that we believe are most effective for you are how many new users you bring to your site, and that's sort of creating opportunities for them to become customers and to buy product or products over time in terms of lifetime value. And then how do you measure how effective that is? So setting your campaign strategies up in the context of the funnel. So that funnel that Anna was showing on the webinar, that's how we recommend structuring your campaign. So structure your campaign to go find users who are highly interested, to go find users who have never been to your site before, and then understand how much it costs to go find those users by saying, hey, look, I'm paying. So Criteo is similar to search, by the way, that everything we do is on a CPC basis. So if you're going to pay 20 cents a click for somebody who's already seen 8 products and you're hoping buys, you're probably going to have to pay a little bit more for somebody who's never been to your site in order to get a purchase. So understanding that in the context of your cost of sale, which is the amount of money you're spending versus the amount of money you're making in incremental sales, is critical. But beyond that, in terms of understanding specific segments, and there's all sorts of data providers out there, we think that it's better if you can focus on your overall advertising objectives by understanding where the user is in the funnel, being able to bid appropriately for them, being able to measure your cost of sales, and that allows you to drive your business forward most effectively and help you understand where you want to place bets, both economically and strategically, to help you build your enterprise.
Great, well said.
The only other,
go ahead.
Anna, sorry, the only other thing I'd say, there's a really great slide that you have with the little fish and the big fish. That, I think, is just, it's phenomenal, because what you can do today as a medium-sized company is you can compete for ad space and compete for audience, and your competition is the biggest, is the Amazons, the Macy's, the Bloomingdale's, the Expedias of the world, where if you want to show an ad to the user, you just have to decide how much you're willing to pay for that user, and then you're for the most part, you're on a level playing field with them. So the higher you bid, the more likely you are to be able to show an ad to a user, whereas I think 5 years ago, or even a couple years ago, it was not a level playing field, and small advertisers were at a big disadvantage. But technological advances have really made it a lot easier for advertisers of any size to get in front of customers, and they control how much they bid, and that controls how many ads they can show to their potential customer base.
Yeah, I really like the idea of mid-market business being more efficient and a little bit smarter, and that gives them the ability to compete with these bigger businesses. It's a commitment to the right tools and commitment to people that are going to look at the data. But if you're running a smart, efficient business, I think, as a mid-sized business, you can compete with the Amazons of the world.
These
Absolutely.
kinds of exciting opportunity and, exciting ideas, and it's possible for you as a smaller advertiser is actually a great segue into our next section, which is where Jacob is really going to get the opportunity to kind of get us all excited about what's happening in the future of ad technology and how it can make you a better marketer. Now, this is something that you touched on a little bit earlier, Jacob, but this idea that you can serve the right ad at the right time to the right person every time just based on the user behaviors that you're generating from the ads that you're already showing.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's a couple things. One is just to back up for a sec. The reason I joined Criteo and the reason Criteo was started in the first place is because there was a perception that display advertising was broken. Search was a phenomenal advertising vehicle with some major limitations. And that's not to say that it's not great. It's just to say that it's not everything. And that's why we're talking about media marketing mix. I think the problem that Criteo was trying to solve is how to make display perform just as well as search does to help advertisers increase their budgets and thus increase the way that they can build their business. And I think that what we need to get very good at as an industry, and this is, I think, the future of advertising, is including to increase the controls and abilities for people to advertise across any different format. Where Criteo is headed, and what we're starting to talk to to some clients about, is the ability to build these full funnel capabilities in display to drive a massive amount of new traffic to their sites and a massive amount of new customer base to increase the number of products that they sell every month at scale. And I think that the holy grail of all that is to be able to do it. It's being done today to a certain degree in a fragmented way, but to be able to do that in one dashboard holistically and to be able to do it efficiently, so you really understand your true cost of acquisition. I think that's where we're trying to take all this, and it's difficult. It's very easy to do DR advertising and make it perform pretty well, direct response advertising. What's hard is to take somebody who's never seen your product and never heard of your brand and to get them to come to your site in a way that is most likely to turn them into a loyal customer. And that's the very difficult problem to solve, and that's what I think we and some other smart folks in the industry are working on. So I think that's going to be critical. I think for advertisers, big and small alike, the question to really push all your partners on is, when you're buying search, display, you're doing email, video, you have in-store advertising, billboards, etc., how well is that working? And I don't want to open up a Pandora's box because this is really complicated stuff, but you have to be able to understand for each partner and overall how effective is your marketing program. And I think the best solutions out there in the next couple of years are going to help you answer that question. So if you drive $1 million worth of sales on a post-click basis with Criteo, is that 100% attributable to Criteo, or is it something that you need to share among multiple channels? And that's hard stuff to solve, but it's stuff that will be solved because we're all working on it and our customers are pushing us to do that. So I think really being able to message to people on a full funnel basis is going to be one set of the future where you don't have 1 million logins, you have one. And then to be able to do that across multiple formats, in mobile, in video, on the desktop, that's also critical, and that's stuff that we're hard at work at and piloting some things already. So not to say that Criteo is the future of advertising. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think from reaching people on all screens, being able to market to users on a user-centric basis, and ultimately to be able to inject the best part of display, which is the ability to really showcase your brand and create a big impression on people, is all those pieces go into the holistic solution that both mid-market and any size advertisers should be looking forward to for the next couple of years.
Well, this is really inspiring stuff. Thank you, Jacob. So everyone, before we get to your questions, I just want to do a shout out about this white paper that Criteo has been kind enough to share with us. We will include this in the follow-up email, but it's a really fascinating white paper that actually in many ways drove the content of this webinar about how paid search and performance display are simply better together. Performance display can help you to squeeze, as much as you can out of the dollars that you spend in search, which is becoming ever more important as search becomes more expensive. But you know that you need to do search, and so finding ways to make it more effective are very important. It really goes pretty deep on performance display and what that means. So we're going to get to your questions.
I would also say, sorry, Anna. I would also say it's a fun read. I know it's hard to believe, but it's not a long paper, and it's actually fascinating stuff. And I think that, along with the Trada paper, it's really interesting. I mean, every advertiser we've ever talked to does SEM, and it's a great strategy, but what are the limitations? What should you be thinking about? And what tools do you have today with where display technology can come to let you really double down on your marketing efforts and see much better performance? So I'd highly recommend it. It's only a few pages long. And definitely worth a read.
No, he's telling the truth. It's probably only about 5 or 6 pages long, and really, really interesting about how to really use performance display with search. So we will get to your questions in just a moment. I'm going to take a second to talk about Trada and Trada's solution. So we've talked a lot about how you have to do search, and one of the best ways to simplify search is to use Trada. We did mention earlier that Trada's platform is probably different from everything that you've heard about before. We actually have a community of paid search experts who do the work for you. So as an advertiser, rather than working with an algorithmic platform, you actually have a team of experts who work for you. You can talk to them. You can give them your goals, and they are paid based on their performance, and so they work to beat your CPA goals. Our best customers are mid-market and larger small companies who have sophisticated needs and the sort of marketing team of 1 or 2 or 3 type of problem. Mid-market companies specifically have this problem and opportunity where there are these many armed small marketing teams with a lot of things to do. And Trada is really the solution for taking those things off your hands, but as a very sophisticated solution, we're able to beat your aggressive goals. So if you are interested in booking a demo today, we'll have one of our Trada Marketplace experts give you a personalized campaign assessment and go through the marketplace and give you some more information about how Trada can help. It is pay for performance, and it is a group of humans who actually do the work for you. If you're interested in a demo, please go ahead and type "I'd like a demo" into the chat box, and Alex will make sure that you get that set up. So I am ready to answer your questions. I will moderate these and send them out to Matt and Jacob here. Give me just a moment to get organized. So Matthew's question is, how long should you run an A/B test to get enough data? 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or does that depend on the amount of data?
Yeah, I think it's truly more of a data velocity question than it is a calendar day of, a span of time. If you're in a campaign, be it search or display, and you're accruing lots and lots of impressions daily, you can get a sufficient A/B test done within, 7 to 14 days. If your budgets are a little more restrictive and you're not able to garner those big impressions on either side, you may have to run this for a month to 6 weeks. I would say in most cases, if you're running this longer than about 6 weeks, you start to introduce other factors around some ad fatigue and seasonality and things like that can start to bias the test. So I would say if you've got good data velocity, you can run a pretty short test, 7 days, and then up to about 6 weeks.
Thanks, Matt. So I'd like to send the next question over to Jacob. Jesse says, what are your thoughts on using search retargeting on words that are too expensive on PPC to drive awareness? Basically, our CPA is too high for direct response, but the keywords could drive awareness for a lower price. Jacob, can I send that one to you?
Yeah, of course. So I think in general that's the challenge, right? Is that search advertising keywords have gotten a lot more expensive. I think we've seen, according to our data over here, which I haven't vetted with Anna. We see that data is that the price for PPC advertising has just tripled over the last 5 years, and that's something that everybody's going to have to take into account. I'd say that absolutely you can buy the same keywords in search retargeting for a lower price, and because you will find users at different times and be able to message them at different times, the market is way more flexible. The challenge that you will absolutely have to handle is when you find the user, they will be less responsive than they would when you find them in a search environment. So if I search, I don't know why Macy's red shoes is on my mind, but I search for Macy's red shoes, and 3 days later I see an ad for Macy's red shoes because you bought that using search retargeting. My response rate may not be as high, so you have to take that into account. On the other hand, the price you have to pay for each click can be a lot lower. Just the question is, what are your objectives and what you're trying to achieve? But this is absolutely a great use case for when to use search retargeting when SEM is maxed out or too expensive for you.
That's interesting. That's something that had not occurred to me, and it's a great answer. So I'd like to send this next question over to both of you. Jacob, I'd love to hear your answer first. Nick says, I spend about $30K a month on search. What % should I allocate to display if I'm just getting started? Jacob?
Oh, that is a great question. Matt, what? No. So I think, look, if search is hitting your ROI goals, then you shouldn't hobble your existing strategy to try something new. I think one of the slides in the deck was all about testing, or in the presentation was all about testing. It's really critical to test new strategies. So what I do is I take, depending on what your ROI objectives are, so what you're trying to achieve, I would take a portion of that budget and think about allocating it to a display strategy. Think about what your the cost per click, what your conversion rate requirements would be to really make sure that it's going to be ROI positive for you. And then the goal is, and I don't know what the particular situation of the asker is, the goal is not to take $30K and start dividing it up into different areas. The goal is to give you access to a bigger pie. So take the $30K and then add more on top of it, because ultimately the idea is if you're advertising with performance display or with search, you should be getting a positive return on your investment, which should allow you to allocate additional budget to those strategies, which should grow your business as much as possible. So that would be my slightly longer answer.
Man, Anna wanted to fight, and I don't think she's going to get it, because I agree with a lot of that. I mean, I think, again, yeah, it's hard to, there are companies that do get into a rob Peter to pay Paul, finite marketing budget. But if you've gotten to the point where you know your data, you know your metrics, and you are returning positive ROI from the campaigns you are running, I totally agree, Jacob, that you should go out and try to get additional test budget as opposed to taking budget away from something that is currently hitting your ROI goals. It just seems like you're introducing a bit of risk with the testing. So, introduce that as new budget. I would be interested to hear from your side of what you think a reasonable test budget might be, for that medium-sized business. Can I learn enough about, how some of these other mediums are going to be successful on a $5,000 budget, $10,000 budget, $20,000 budget? Do you have a sense of that from the portfolio of customers you guys usually work with?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I mean, let's think about it with concrete numbers. So let's say it's $10,000, and we set a 50-cent cost per click. That means that we hope that we're going to get about 20,000 clicks. And let's say well, to keep it easy on my brain, let's say there's a 10% conversion every time somebody comes to the site. That means that you'll generate about 2,000 sales from those clicks. So I guess I'd ask the question back to the advertiser, is that enough to let you know if this is effective or not? I think a rule of thumb, because everybody has different budgets, is just to think about what you're trying to achieve. If you only have enough budgets to drive 2 or 3 sales to see if that actually works, or 10 or 12 sales, it might not really give you the satisfaction of understanding if it's an effective advertising strategy. However, if you can allocate enough to generate a couple hundred, a couple thousand sales, then you start to see, oh, this is how much I'm spending and this is how much I'm getting, and that can give you a better sense. And this is something that our account management team does every day, is to work with advertisers to see, hey, if I need to do a test with Criteo, what's the minimum that I should do? And I'd say for us, and I don't want to speak for our account management team, 10,000 is sort of a good range, but everybody has different objectives, and depending on what your solution that you're looking at, it might be different for you. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out, I'm spending this much money, I'm getting this much back in revenue, is this worth it to my business?
Yeah, that is the great and terrible thing about data, is you get kind of addicted to it, and you want it to be statistically significant, and in some cases, depending on the transaction costs that you're trying to achieve, it can take big budgets to get a satisfactory level of data to make those empirical decisions. So I'm right there with you. I agree. It kind of depends on the outputs you're looking for. but it's very helpful to get your perspective on where some of those budgets might start.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
So we are just running over our time, so I'm going to take one more question from Matthew. Is there any value in paying for Facebook likes or Facebook retargeting?
So can I take that as well?
Yeah, you can start.
Okay. So our short answer is we're part of the Facebook exchange program over here at Criteo, and we've been buying a massive amount of impressions. Facebook generates a lot of ads, and what I would say is there's absolutely value in this advertising channel. It's another way to get a display ad in front of a user. Users on Facebook spend a ton of time on the site. It's a huge opportunity to get additional exposure and reach. It's a new marketplace, so it's a very different dynamics than other places. So in some cases, you can get a great return on your investment because the inventory is not as expensive as other inventory. But it's definitely something where if you think about all the display ads in the U.S. and where you could be showing, Facebook is a huge portion of that. And I don't have the exact numbers at my fingertips, but it's more than a quarter of the U.S. display impressions are Facebook now. So I think it's a critical strategy. You have to ask your partner, can they do that for you? And I think it's totally worthwhile as long as they can get the same performance that achieves your objectives. It's something that you should definitely explore paying for.
So I agree. I think Facebook is obviously a channel that's in front of everyone, and I think the idea of driving Facebook likes is a great idea as long as you have a plan for what you're going to do with them. Driving Facebook likes becomes more like content marketing and more like nurturing, and it involves thinking about the way that users already behave on Facebook and learning how to interface with them in the way that they already behave. We've seen, just with the things that we have run here, that advertisers are seeing a much better result driving likes and then content marketing essentially to them than they are putting ads on Facebook and then driving users back to their site, which involves changing the Facebook users' behavior. So I'm interested to hear what you think about that, Jacob.
I think Facebook is going to be a really interesting thing to look back on and see how they were able to effectively advertise in a way that didn't alienate their user base. I think what we've seen so far, so we're not in the business of generating likes or helping people monitor their Facebook page or anything like that. So we're strictly a performance business. And so what we've seen is that while the response rate for users who see Facebook display ads is, I think, a bit lower than the rest of the market, it's still an incredibly performant area to invest in because of the scale that you can get and the amount that you pay is in line with the amount that you're getting back. So I think we see it as a huge value in terms of advertising. I think other folks, and Facebook will have to figure this out, is it more effective to market to people on the sidebar or in their feed? I think that's a real Facebook-specific question, but for advertisers who don't have access to Facebook at scale, that they have partners who can help them get access to those users today. So I hope that answers your question, Anna.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you. So everyone, we are going to go ahead and end the webinar soon because it looks like we have gone 5 minutes over our time. But first I want to thank all of our participants for coming. And Jacob from Criteo, thank you so much for being here, Jacob.
Thank you, guys.
We've benefited greatly from your expertise in the performance display area. And Matt Hessler, thank you for being here as always.
Always a pleasure.
Everyone, we will be sending out an email later today or tomorrow with your slides and your recording and the white papers that we promised. If you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out. You can reach me directly at anna@trada.com, or you can find any manner of ways to contact us at trada.com. And if you have any questions for Jacob or Criteo as well, you can send them to me, and I will make sure that they get to the right person. Everyone, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next time. This is the end of the webinar.